besides our Brady Bunch layout. So the circles up top show who's actually viewing. Well, there's 21 viewers, but 6 people actually live logged in watching. Feel free to use the chat on the side the whole time we're chatting. If you want to actually submit a question, type a / and then Q space and ask a question, and it'll actually show up with that question highlighted box like I just showed there. If you do want to reply to somebody's comment, just hover over their handle, and there's a little star there if you want to favorite it, or an arrow there if you want to directly reply. And last but not least, there are the little hands in the corner of our boxes. Those are if we want to give each other, or if the audience wants to give us props, like Jenny's doing right now. She's going to probably go around there. Yep. So feel free to give props in abundance. We like those a lot. Okay, so without further ado, Christina, do you want to hit record?
Yes, I did already, actually.
Oh, we're going.
We are good. We're recording, so we're going to upload this to YouTube. But Sarah and I always forget to introduce ourselves, so we'll do that super quick. I'm Christina, half of One Woman Shop.
I'm Sarah, the other half of One Woman Shop. And our guest today is Amanda, so Christina will give you a quick intro.
So we're going to let you do the vast majority of the intro yourself, Amanda. But the reason that Amanda is with us today is because, first of all, she was on our 100 Best Sites for Solopreneurs list because she was nominated by somebody in our community. So thank you for that nomination. And introducing us to Amanda. And then Amanda actually pitched us about coming on to talk about pitching, which is so meta, and practicing what you preach, and we absolutely love it. So if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, then we would love to hear about it.
Yeah, sure. So that pitch actually was so kind of cool and exciting for me to write because, first of all, my subject line was, this is a pitch about pitching, but you guys gave me the opportunity to contribute twice, which I think is, you know, such a win. And when I go to my community and say like, hey, I could teach you this stuff, you guys gave me a great example of the work in action. So thank you for that example. So my background is in the corporate world, in communications, and specifically in PR and marketing, but even more specifically in writing for PR. So for 10 years, I was the editorial director of a small firm that specialized in getting our clients television and radio coverage. So clients would come to me and our team and say, hey, we have this new product, whether, it could have been a pharmaceutical, it could have been a new paper towel, it could have been anything. I did work from beauty products to entertainment entities to nonprofits to pharmaceutical and everything. So they would come to us with their new project and they would say, hey, we have this product. We either hired the spokesperson or help us find a spokesperson and then get us on TV. And then I would be in charge of devoting a conference call or a meeting to figuring out what was going to make this product and this spokesperson interesting enough to be on television, or how can we create a story and package this up so that we could offer it to television and radio stations. They would be interested in doing an informational interview that would be useful to their audiences. So when I got, I was sort of getting a little bit disenchanted with that corporate work because, like I said, I was doing work for pharmaceutical, and I even at one point had to do a pitch for an agro business company that wanted the message out there that like their pesticide wasn't as bad as everyone thought it was. And I was just like, this is slowly killing me. My soul is dying. So I always kind of had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to do my own thing. And I just wasn't really clear on what that would be. So when I ventured out into the entrepreneurial world, I also was kind of disenchanted. So I wanted to move away from communications, not really realizing that it's kind of an essential skill when you're running your own shop. So I came back around to that and realized like, hey, this is actually something that I do really love. And it's not something that I necessarily wanted to leave behind, but I just needed to figure out a way to do it so that it made me feel good about what I was doing and helping entrepreneurs who really put their their soul and their passion into what they're doing, helping them to get their name out there. I could not think of a better application of my talent and my skill than that. So that's how I came around to doing what I'm doing. So now I teach entrepreneurs how to package themselves, how to create a story behind their service, their product, and even their journey, and pitch themselves with confidence to the media, or even just creating content on their website, how to create a story that really sells.
That is awesome. I think, my reels are like just turning nonstop because I'm like, we have questions for you, but I just thought about 10 more. So let's get right into it, because we hear all the time from our community and fellow solopreneurs that we work with. And of course, we work mostly with women who just hate putting themselves or their business out there. And a lot of it is through pitching. Like they just don't feel like it's them. So what are some of the biggest reasons you've identified that women in particular, but any solopreneur feels that way about pitching?
Yeah, I think that I really, I can also speak for myself. I think that when we put ourselves out there, we're held back by this idea that we have to do it right. And we don't want to hit send on that email. It's like this, you like get the sweats when you start to consider sending an email that is asking someone for acceptance. So if you have it in your head, like, well, if I do this perfectly, if I pitch right, or if I, do this right, then I won't, then everything will go well. You end up like totally stymied because you don't know. A lot of people get caught up in like doing it perfectly. So I think that when you have a background in, or you have some level of confidence in putting yourself out there, that you are, doing it right, doing it well, responding, or, sending an email to an editor in the manner that they would want to receive it, then I think you get over that hurdle of putting yourself out there becomes a little bit less scary, because you have a bit more confidence around like, okay, I'm doing this right. I know that, I know what I'm putting out there is acceptable. And I think the other thing that trips us up is that we're worried about what they're going to find when they look back, like if they go back to our website, or if they check out where we've been prior to pitching them. If we don't have a very strong platform, I think we sort of put a roadblock in front and say like, oh, they'll never want to talk to me. Like I haven't been anywhere. And I think that's a common, no matter what medium you're pitching, that's really a common thought, is like, how do I get the clips? Meaning like, how do I get the evidence to show them that I've contributed elsewhere and been successful if I can't do a successful pitch? Or how do I pitch successfully without the clips? So you need the clips in order to get the placement, but you need the placement in order to get the clips. And I think that that's something that might hold us back, but shouldn't necessarily hold us back, because a great idea will sell regardless. If you come to someone and you say like, this is what I do, and this is an idea that I had that I think could serve your audience, and it's a good one and it resonates, then they're not going to say, well, you haven't really been anywhere else before, so we can't really help you here. I don't think, unless you're pitching like the Today Show, maybe.
That makes sense. So I think just kind of drawing on what you said, as we pitch more and more, we'll include the places that we've been already featured. We'll say, we had a little mention on Mashable, and we had a little mention on Huffington Post, which I think as you're going is great to mention those. But my question for you is, do you think it's important to start small, to start with kind of maybe a local blogger before you pitch Huffington Post, or do you think that you kind of just go big or go home?
I actually love those small niche blogs and outlets, because the audience, if you find the ones that are right for you and right for your business, the audience is going to be even more receptive. So I'm a huge advocate, whether you're writing about where you came from, on your about page, or you're writing a pitch, or you're looking for outlets in order to pitch, I'm a huge advocate of being specific. And that includes honing down to these like really specific niche bloggers and outlets. So if it's, if you want to write a story, let's say you're a health coach and you want to write a story about, the change in seasons and how to prepare for fall, that's a very general idea. But if you find a small website that caters to, moms that cook, macrobiotic meals for their children, then you can change that pitch and preparing for fall and cooking, for your kids, preparing your kids for a new fall diet, or introducing how to use those new fall vegetables in meals for your kids. So it becomes a very specific pitch because the outlet has dictated that. And I think you can use that to your advantage. And yes, I think it's easier to get into those outlets with a very specific idea, and then the audience resonates with it because it's so perfect for them.
Yeah, I think so Christina and I are probably thinking the same example. I think we were like happy dancing around our living room, kitchen, co-working space, wherever, when we found out that we got mentioned on Mashable. We were just ecstatic. But really what happened was that was picked up, it was syndicated from a post on Skill Crush, which is a smaller site, and they develop, courses for people trying to learn development and stuff. But because Skill Crush's audience is so much more targeted towards women, and it is smaller, and it does align better with our audience, we actually saw a much greater return on being mentioned on Skill Crush.
Wow!
Even though that Mashable article was shared, 80 times more than the Skill Crush one, it didn't matter. So I think that was like the perfect example of, for us, you're not wasting your time by pitching the small niche outlets, because you might actually, as long as those audiences align, you might actually see a much greater return. So that gets right into our next question, which is, for people like our one woman shops, what kind of tips do you have for finding those niche outlets?
Yeah. So your example, which is a perfect illustration of what I'm talking about, really speaks to how I would suggest going about looking for outlets. I think that, so there's a couple of different things to consider. First, the way that I advocate pitching is really kind of like a no nonsense, no holds barred kind of approach. So it's going to take some effort to come up with your idea and write your pitch. And, you really almost write the article as you're writing your pitch. And maybe we could talk about that later. So the reason why I bring it up is that you really want to find outlets that are going to give you a good bang for your buck. So ones like you're talking about that syndicate their content is huge. That's like the gold standard, is to find an outlet that will take your one article and distribute it for you to other outlets. And it's easy to identify sites that do that, because they'll have on their site in the byline, it'll say like originally published on Inc. or originally published on Mashable or whatever. So if it says that the content came from somewhere else, it probably means that they have a relationship with these other sites to distribute their content as well. So I would say that's a great way, kind of a tell sign on a site that you would definitely want to consider contributing to. Another great way is and I found this is like the second best way to find sites, and it's so analog, but tell your friends to keep their eyes out for sites that they read and that they look at that they think that you would be a good fit for. Because I know for myself, I have a very kind of like narrow internet habit and I always go to the same sites and read the same, the same blogs. But my friends are very creative and they read different things than I read, but they know me well. And, I have friends that I obviously have personal friends, but I also have personal friends that are also business friends. And those are the friends that you would talk to about like, hey, keep your eyes out, let me know if you've come across anything that that you think I should reach out to, or that you see an idea that might resonate with me. And it'll introduce you to a whole new set of media. And then one other tip is to, like we were talking about, going for those specific sites. You probably know who your audience is, but you can also look at yourself and ask yourself, who else can I talk to, because of either where I went to school or where I am in my personal life, or what if I have a family, or if I'm a single person, or there are all these different kind of niches that you can tap into, whether you love sports, maybe your message could apply to someone who's really into fitness or really active, or there are different ways that you could tailor your message to different audiences, and that can help you find some other publications.
Yeah, absolutely. And I come from a recruiting background, so Sarah and I will be talking about that at some point on another blog. But I love, creative Google kind of tricks and using and or. And so one thing I always do if I'm trying to find pitching opportunities is, kind of keyword for niche. So maybe like female entrepreneur and contribute or write for us in quotes. And that always pops up some really good.
Oh, I love that. I'm totally using that.
Awesome. You should. But I love that you call it analog. But I think that one thing we talk about a lot with our coaching clients is just because you know of something does not mean that other people do. And you might think this is super basic. Of course, everyone knows this site, but you'd be surprised that a lot of people, aren't kind of in the same little bubble you are online. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, our little bubbles.
Yeah.
So Christina, do you have a question? Because I'm ready to keep going.
Go for it.
All right. So, I was editing a post for a client, and it's called What to Pitch When Your Baby is Ugly. And now they work specifically in the startup space. So they're talking about pitching products and beta tests and stuff like that. But I loved that title. And I think it ties directly into one of the questions we had for you, which is, for a lot of us, we don't think we have a story, or we don't think we have anything interesting to tell. We think we work in a boring niche, whatever it is. What do you tell somebody that just really doesn't feel like their service or their product is really interesting? And I'm really looking forward to your answer, because I actually work with people on developing their story. So this is super exciting for me.
Yeah. So specific to developing your story, I think that people's personal stories are always interesting. And so if you can look into your personal experience or your journey, or even your professional journey that brought you to create whatever it is that you created, I guarantee there is something in there that inspired the creation of that product or that service that will make it interesting. So for example, I have a client who went through a coach training. She actually is in her late 60s. She went through a coach training and became a coach, and decided that, this was like her second act. She had already had a completely different professional career before. She decided that through actually talking to me and other, and other women that are my peer group, that she wanted to be a coach for new moms. And so she had this really adorable name for her new practice. It was called the Yenta Mentor, which is perfect for her, for where she lives geographically. And she was just stuck in terms of like, why would someone want to talk to me? Why would they trust me? And I had to advocate her past to her to get her to see why this is really special. And the fact of the matter is that she, in her prior life, was the head of a mental health association on Long Island. She has 2 grown children herself. So there is this whole line of experience that make her perfect for what she does. And I really believe that exists for everyone. And I think that it might not be as obvious as that one was, but there is some kind of through line between where you were and what you're doing today that you can draw on. And you can even you can kind of retrofit it, because you can look at, what did I create? What am I doing now? and like, what are the values and the essence of that? And then go back to your past and say like, oh, like for me, for example, I just recently unearthed this little ditty that was when I was, so now I teach people to write for their business. I teach them how to pitch. And when I was like 6, I had taught my sister, my little sister, who was like 5 years younger than me, to write. I guess I was a little bit older because she was maybe like 4. I taught her to write before she even went to kindergarten. And her teacher in kindergarten was like, she kind of learned the wrong way how to write. Like she learned the wrong way to like write in script or whatever. They were like, hold off on teaching her. But that was kind of like an example of what I'm talking about, where you can kind of say like, this is where I came from, and here's what I'm doing today. And this is why it's really a perfect fit and why I'm meant to be doing this.
And I think just to kind of reiterate part of what you said is sometimes we're talking directly about our service or our product. So, sometimes we will pitch a story that is about something, but really the purpose is to get people to our membership page. But I also think that there are times and places where your story you're talking about your story, and that's feeding people back to your website. But it doesn't necessarily, I think, and I don't know if you disagree, but it doesn't necessarily need to have a super direct connection to your current product or service. So my example is I was laid off when I was 23, and then kind of started my solo business and started One Woman Shop from that. So I actually wrote all these guest posts about lessons I learned from being laid off. And at the time, they didn't connect to any product or service, but now they do. So
right.
Kind of going back.
Yeah, I think that I think if I understand what you're saying correctly, I think I totally agree that there's always, when you share what you've been through or what your road to becoming who you are today, you're creating this relationship between yourself and the reader. And whether that translates into a sale right now or translates into a long-term, seed that you've just planted that will bloom in 5 years, it doesn't matter. Like, that's really the goal, is to create relationships, because that then is what builds your business. You'll remain top of mind. There is an emotional connection, which is so important. So I'm totally an advocate of, I think it's 100% like one of the most essential things is sharing your story.
Yeah, I often tell people, you can try your best to put it in context, but sometimes context isn't direct. It's more about like, this definitely connects with something they care about, whether or not it is selling something I directly offer. But it is about creating those relationships. So that makes me think of a question we get a lot. And it's, as a solopreneur, how ingrained should I be in my business's story? And what do you tell somebody that's really nervous to kind of put themselves at the forefront, even though they are the solo business owner behind their venture?
Right. Yeah. So I think it's really all about choosing the details that you share. I'm never an advocate of like opening the closet and letting all of the skeletons fall out. I don't think that's necessary or prudent. I think that when you craft your story, you want to choose the details that you share very strategically so that you feel comfortable putting it out there. I call it the story of you that's fit to print. You don't want to like, just like show all your wounds or your dirty laundry. It's really about finding those details that are fun, that are emotional, that create that emotional connection, but that relate to what you're doing today. They have to be relevant.
I like that advice a lot.
So, so we were just looking over your blog, and one thing that caught our eye, and you may have mentioned one of these techniques, but we were intrigued when you said the 3 super secret tricks for finding guest posting opportunities. So I don't know if you've talked about any of those.
Yeah. So I think, if I remember correctly, that the two that I mentioned were, the two that I mentioned in this conversation were talking to your friends, like having someone that's on the lookout for outlets that you may or may not be aware of, looking for places that syndicate their content, and also finding niches that you can speak to that are not necessarily people that you want to sell, but niches that are specific to who you are. So they're audiences that will resonate with what you have to say because of the experience that you've had or where you've been. Not like, oh, hey, I can sell my idea to so-and-so. It's really more about like, oh, I can speak to this and serve them in some way.
And we'll definitely direct people over to your blog.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you mind if I jump in again, Sarah? No. So I've actually been talking to my roommate who might be listening to this blab right now. We were talking about pitching a lot lately. And I'm really curious, about when I like what you said at the beginning of it's more kind of a spectrum of a terrible pitch to a great pitch. It's not a yes or no pitch. And so, even with a good pitch, you could very well get accepted. But my question to you is, how do you know when you're done with your pitch and ready to send it off?
That's a really good question. I think that, so like I said, I think that my style of pitching is pretty comprehensive. So when I have like a very clear idea of what my article is, or, what I'm pitching is going to entail in a comprehensive sense. So it's really like, I'm sort of like thinking about this on the fly. I would say that your pitch really needs to include your idea, why you're perfect to deliver that idea, and what the audience will take away from your delivery of that idea. So once you've covered those three things, I think those are really the essential elements, because you don't want to lead with like, here I am, I'm pitching myself. You are pitching 100%. This is like a huge takeaway. You are pitching an idea. And then you can say, this is why you should have me communicate this idea. This is why I'm perfect to deliver this idea. And then how this idea will serve the audience. Like, I'm going to offer tips on XYZ, or I will tell them the 3 ways to never do, this or whatever. So that's what the takeaways are going to be. So I think, and then of course, like we said, you want to include like, here's where, as you collect your clips along the way, as you build your platform, you want to say like, that's also part of the argument, the case for why you should be the one to deliver this idea. But, you can also say like, here's where I've written about this before, check it out. And, it also provides kind of like a reference in that regard. But I think when you hit on those 3, here's my idea, here's why I should deliver this idea, and here's what your audience will get out of it, that's pretty much when you think you're done. And then I always say a little prayer before I hit send.
I love it. But I think the most important part is clicking send, which is
right. Exactly. Right. That's when you know you're done. Right. Actually, you're done when you start writing your next pitch.
There you go. I like that.
I love it.
I love when we do a summary of the Google or the labs now that we do with our guests. We always say our biggest takeaways. And so when somebody comes on and says, this is a big takeaway, it's a really good sign it's a good takeaway.
Right.
Thank you. Like that you self-identified that.
Yeah, a little less transcribing necessary on your part there then.
So I think you got into this a little bit, but before you mentioned that you basically, when you're writing these comprehensive pitches, you're basically writing your article as you're writing your pitch. Can you talk a little bit more about what you meant about that?
Yeah, so that always really made me cringe when I was starting to do this, especially writing like back in the day when you would write a query for a magazine article and they would say like, you really do kind of like need to do your research and, identify who your sources will be. It's like that is an even bigger undertaking than what I'm talking about. But I think in order to write an effective pitch, you need to understand the scope of your story. So, because again, you're writing about you're pitching your idea. So you need to have a very clear understanding of what your idea will entail from start to finish. So even when I'm writing a pitch, I actually will include probably like the first paragraph of what I envision my article will, how I envision my article will start. And then I will say like, it kind of creates like a headline and a first paragraph. And then you can sort of tease what you will then deliver in the way of tips. So that's kind of what I mean, is that you have to have a very clear idea of what you're pitching. And a lot of times, even if an outlet, how do I say this? Like I've written pitches where the outlet hasn't accepted my idea, but they've liked it enough to say, come back at us with something different, or in this, going in this direction or whatever. Any response you ever get is a win.
That's a really great point, because we just did we did a lot of direct outreach for our bundle that ran last week. And a lot of the benefit of reaching out, even if we didn't, actually make the connection for what we were asking, is that now we're on those people's radar. Now, there were other things that came about. One of our favorite things to share is that we asked Ariana Huffington if she would contribute a digital copy of Thrive. And the response was, we can't participate right now, but we'd love to have you guys as contributors to HuffPo. And it was just like, okay, so, it's exactly that,
right.
That back and forth of just get on their radar, and you never know what else can come of it.
Yeah.
Also, I was watching How I Met Your Mother last night, and Ariana Huffington was on it, and I was like, of course she is. She's everywhere in my life now.
She's following you.
Yeah, right? Or I'm following her, hopefully. So I think that this conversation has been kind of the benefits of pitching and also the tactics of pitching. But to go back to the benefits, because I think that if people are not convinced that pitching is going to be valuable for them, they're just not even going to start, and the second part of the conversation isn't going to be relevant. But I'm wondering if you can tell us in one sentence what you would say to someone who avoids pitching to help them see the value of it, because we see the value.
Yeah. I've thought a lot about that. And I think the one sentence is actually a question, like, what's the risk? What are really the stakes? It's not, there are no stakes. There's like no serious consequences that are going to come of, your email being ignored, or you just have to recognize that it's the story that you create around that rejection. That's the stake. Like, those are the only stakes. So if you can just say like, it doesn't really matter. Like, this is so not of no consequence in my life on the grand scale, and just move on to the next pitch. Like, I think that's always my goal with anyone I work with. Okay, we sent that pitch out. Time, it's done. Let's move on to the next one. And that it's kind of like dating in that regard. You're like, the best way to get over an old relationship is to start a new one. But it's true. Like, the best way to sort of forget about that pitch and the best way to move on from wondering about the outcome is to write your next pitch.
Yeah. So Shelby actually had a question over in the comments there. And Shelby, if you'd like to take our open seat, you can just hit join there, and I'm sure Christina will accept you. But Shelby asked, how do you include all of the information but deliver it in a brief, succinct way? Editors don't love getting long emails. And I know so I accept a lot of pitches for One Woman Shop, and we're pretty clear about, we want a tentative title, the mission of the piece, and 3 to 5 bullet points. Yep. Sometimes I get one sentence, and sometimes I get the whole post. So what do you say to somebody that's pitching and wants to include enough but not go overboard?
Yeah, well, I definitely, like you said, would pay attention to the writer's guidelines and submit the way that they would like to. I mean, if they're good enough to provide you with an outline of how they want to receive a pitch, then, you know, you owe it to them to follow that. Um, the other way, and, you know, I have templates for pitching that, that I use all the time that are really, it's like, you know, the introduction, you put a sentence that shows them that you understand their content, whether it's, you know, an article that you read that was on the site that you really loved, or an interview you watched or listened to, that if you're pitching a podcast or something like that, show them that you know the content and be honest about it, because you don't want to just like look at the latest article and be like, hey, that was my favorite article. So show that you know the content, then just go right into that pitch. You know, there's not a lot of need for pleasantry. They want you to get to, I mean, and you guys can speak to this. Tell me if we're off here, but you want to just get to the point, really. And, you know, put in there, you know, here's an idea that I think would resonate with your audience, because I understand they like XY, you know, articles and tips on XYZ. And then get right to the point.
And I think we say this all the time, but I think just something to add is, like, when you pitched us with your story, like, great, that's less work, less people we have to hunt down. So I think sometimes seeing yourself as doing them a favor, not in like a pretentious way, but in like, I'm helping them out. I'm introducing them to me and they don't have to come find me.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. Because, and, you know, I think that's another great point, to put alongside that idea of like, how do you get over that initial fear of putting yourself out there, is like, these outlets, these bloggers, these media entities, they need content. They need you. So if you're delivering a good idea, you are doing them a favor. You're totally right.
I love that point as an editor. I really do, because, you know, a lot of my life is like, you know, looking at some really bad writing, but man, when we get great pitches, it is like Christmas in my inbox. I'm just like, yes, you have no idea how much, you know, we appreciate filling our editorial calendar with other people's content. It's kind of what our blog is for. And so they are absolutely doing us a favor.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Okay, so we really like to kind of do some rapid fire questions towards these conversations. And we're not super great at rapid fire, so we'll ask you the question, but then sometimes we like to ask follow-up questions, so we'll apologize.
It becomes a little less rapid fire.
Yeah. Yep, it's a little bit of a downfall.
I'm game.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll kick it off. So what is your favorite social media platform? I hate to admit this, but I sort of think of social media as like a little bit of a necessary evil. I do like Twitter. I like that you can share, that you can just share content that's meaningful to you in a very like quick, succinct way. And also I like the fact that it moves very quickly, because you know, if you put something out there and it's like, you know, meets with crickets or whatever, it's gone, it's done, like move on, put something else out there. I like looking at Facebook because I think I use that a little bit more for like just personal, like keeping up with people. And I love the concept of Periscope, and I've done a number of those and I've really loved them. So I would say that like, that's sort of, that's sort of like gaining on the list. And I really am intrigued and interested in Blab. I'm super psyched to be introduced to this. Yeah, we love it. We love
it. Sarah always like forces me to adopt these like new. I always think that I'm like, you know, one of the first movers, but apparently I'm not. I'm always like, no. And then we get on. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. We should totally do this all the time.
Yeah. I always know I'm never the first to any party. So
like medium. So on the opposite side of the spectrum, what is the social media platform that you could care less about?
I hate to say it, I have not been able to integrate Instagram into my life. But it's so weird for me too, because I love photography, and I love, you know, that medium, but I just haven't figured out how to make it a habit.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So doing what you do, I'm really interested in this one. What is your favorite blog or website to check first thing in the morning or first sight of the day?
I hate to say, probably go to Facebook first. But I love NPR. I love NPR. I'm definitely like a news hound at heart. I studied journalism in college, which led me to what I ended up doing. But I love being informed. I particularly love NPR because I find it's not like if it bleeds, it leads kind of news outlet. I can't really watch the local news for that reason. I like national news and even local news that, speaks to what's important. But so many of my favorite programs that are not even news related come from NPR. So entertainment and news, I just obsessed.
Yeah, I think that's like the one thing I miss about my former 45-minute commute was that I got so much NPR time in.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. So being in this city, I would walk so much and I would either stream it or listen to podcasts that had been provided by NPR. So I was totally, they got me.
My friend and I just went to Cancun for like 10 days. And every night we'd be like, do you want to go to like Cocobongo and Senor Frogs, or do you want to like get ice cream and just listen to This American Life? So every night we were just I am 26 and my fun is over.
I love it.
But This American Life is amazing.
Yeah, that's one of my I have such a deep love for This American Life.
Okay, cool. So one of our other questions we like to ask is the best thing you've ever heard about your business.
The best thing I ever heard about
your business.
What was it? My business?
Yeah, like the best feedback you've ever received.
Oh, I just like last week I got an email from a client who had a pitch that got accepted to the Change blog, which I think is a beautiful site. And he just wrote me an email that said, thank you for orchestrating the delivery of this beautiful winning pitch. And I was just like, that's it. That's the mission, is helping people that are doing great work to support others get their work out there in a bigger way. And so I've gotten a number of emails like that, but that one was the most recent and just the most simple. And that's it.
I love it. I mean, it's those simple things that's all we need to hear to keep going sometimes. But that is the perfect segue because we want to give you an opportunity to tell us what you're working on right now specifically for your business and especially where people can find out more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm working right now on an online course that's going to be called Create Content That Connects Pitch School. And so we're going to go through all of the elements of before even writing a winning pitch, coming up with ideas, finding outlets, creating your story so that you know how to integrate your message of your coming up into your pitch. And then writing that pitch, getting it out there and following up in an authentic way. And then also delivering that content in a way that converts, that really, becoming media trained, being able to deliver your message, but then also delivering to the audience what they need to come back to your website or your product or service and be like, I want more of whatever that person is putting down.
Awesome.
So I'm doing that. And I also, on my website, amandaberlin.com, you can find my blog, like you mentioned, but I also have a freebie for your audience, amandaberlin.com/one-woman-shop, all about creating your story, creating your about page specifically, how to write your about page. And really, like we were talking about, pulling out those essential details, not all the details, just the essential details that give you a compelling story and really showcase who you are and what you have to offer.
Awesome. Yeah, I just threw some links in the chat there too.
Oh, awesome.
So our last question, and then we're going to answer a few of the questions that are going on in the chat, is in one sentence, what is the best part about being a one-woman shop?
I think the best part is learning all of these amazing skills that you need to learn in order to deliver your product or service. You guys, I have to plug my computer in.
All right, we'll answer the questions that are going on. So we got one question, and it says, are you guys Spanish speakers as well? I am in Guatemala, and I do speak Spanish.
Wow.
I promise that I don't. If anybody wants to speak Italian, let me know.
There you go.
I actually spent a semester in Madrid.
Nice.
So I speak a little bit of Spanish.
Where are you actually located right now? We didn't ask that at first.
I'm in New Jersey at the moment, but I lived in New York for 15 plus years. So that's really where I call home.
Gotcha.
I lived in Manhattan.
Awesome. And then
I'm so relieved that my computer is plugged in right now.
So another question we got is, how did each of you hear about Blab and what motivated you to use it? I feel like, Sarah, you should answer this one.
Yeah, no, that came specifically from my business coach is Coach Jenny, and you can find her all over Blab every day. So she actually started a series called Level Up, and it's an interview series that she does every Thursday, and now I believe she's actually opened it to Tuesdays too. So she invited me to be on there. I was like, what is this Blab thing? And so I got Cristina on, and then when we normally host these chats on Google Hangouts, but this is like Google Hangouts on steroids. We love it. So when Amanda said she was open to using Blab, we were like, let's do it.
I love it. I love seeing both of you. I love seeing the chats and the applause, and yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you for introducing me to it.
It takes a while to get used to everything going on, but it's actually really fun.
Yeah.
Oh, and at the very last second, when I was like watching the countdown stopped and it said, sorry, Blab is not compatible with Safari. And so I switched over to Google Chrome. I hope I didn't make you guys nervous.
Yeah.
There.
All right.
Awesome. Well, we have to jump back on a Blab in just a few minutes. We're going to be talking about Ariana Huffington's book, Thrive. But I know that both of us needed coffee and the bathroom, as always. So
we're gonna rename ourselves to Old Woman Shop.
Thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. And so thank you for pitching us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being receptive and for having me. And I'm really excited to be connected to you and everyone on the Blab.
Same. So we'll be exporting this to YouTube, posting it to our blog, and sharing some of your awesome links. And we can't wait to get your stuff in front of our audience. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, you guys.